dispassionately examine Trump's Russia policy. Would you describe that as a conciliatory policy?
No, I don't think it is. I do think this. I think Trump wants to have a better relationship with the Russians, and I think Trump wants to pull back from any kind of confrontation with Russia. But good heavens, the resistance to that in this town among the Russophobic elements in the media and in politics, the hostility and hatred of Putin, as though, Stalin never got a beating like this, and nothing compared to it. It astounds me. I think that Trump is, to a degree, is having to accommodate this tendency in his own party. For example, sending the Javelin missiles to Ukraine. I thought that was a terrible mistake. If the Ukrainians start up that war again, they'll get beaten, and there'll be a demand that we get in. I think in the Russian thing, Trump is, frankly, because of what I don't, believe people say they've got something on him or blackmail or something like this. I think Trump feels that, as I do in a way, that basically in the future world coming, that Russia is essentially a part of the West. The Christian Orthodox Russia and Protestant and Catholic Europe and the United States, that's where it all belongs, even though we're secularizing like crazy. So, but I've always felt once the Cold War was over, we didn't have a great natural quarrel with Russia. It was mainly ideological and imperial.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Back when they actually had gulags, it seems like people were a lot more blasé about Russia than they are now.
Sure, in 1933, FDR recognized Stalin's regime at the very moment that horror was going on in Ukraine, with millions and millions starved to death. And when, the Russian ambassador showed up here in the United States, the new ambassador, it was a wonderful move by Stalin. They cheered him on. All of these, the murders and massacres were just appalling. I've got a line in one of my books, a foreign policy book, and I got it from a historian, and he said, by 1939, September 1st, Stalin's victims outnumbered Hitler's 1,000 to 1.
There's no doubt about it that basically native-born Americans of European descent are the ones who are really angriest, I think, at the enormous numbers of illegal aliens marching into the country, many, if not most of them, from the Third World, changing the character and composition of their country, and eventually voting them out of power. Ethno-nationalism, which is the desire of peoples to break away from other peoples and establish their own nation with their own culture and language and religion. They all prevail, and they themselves rule virtually to the exclusion of others. By 2050, there are going to be between 100 million and 135 million Hispanics in the United States, heavily concentrated in the American Southwest. Politically, it'll probably remain part of the United States. Ethnically, culturally, linguistically, I think it could very well be as much a part of Mexico as of the United States. Native-born Americans who are white and African-American are leaving California. Half the people in Los Angeles County, which is 10 million people, half of them don't even speak English in their own home. How can you say we're one nation and one people the way we used to be, say, in 1960, if we're all speaking a different language? We're becoming a Tower of Babel, as in the Old Testament. Explain both sides. This was not a side, and rarely is it in history, where one side is all evil and the other is all good.
Dr. Rand Paul. Speaking of controversial, right? I just got back from Kentucky not too long ago. Was covering the Republican primaries there. You said that when he won the nomination for U.S. Senate for the Republican Party, that he was attacked by both the left and the right. Why is that?
Well, I think he's attacked by elements of the right, the neoconservatives who are very much in favor of going to war with Iran, for example, and military interventionism. And so they've attacked Rand Paul because he questions a foreign policy of interventionism. And he's much closer to my point of view, which is, look, we ought not to engage ourselves in wars and quarrels unless they are America's business. The point is, if you add, say, 40 or 50 million folks in the United States, as we have since 1965, and 1 million or more legal and illegal every year, that is a huge increase in the labor supply. And the demand remains constant, and therefore the wages go down. Real wages have been stagnant for American workers and American families of the working and middle class almost since 1974. In addition to that, 55,000 factories were exported in the first decade of the 21st century, and something like 6 million manufacturing jobs lost. Michael, you got to look at these figures and understand they have a dramatic impact upon Americans working and middle class.
Are you in favor of the North American Free Trade Agreement?
Yeah, I think I am, as a matter of fact.
Are you?
No, it's not a free trade agreement. It's a farce. It's New World Order.
All right.
There is, to me, sort of a supranational establishment in this country that really would like to see the United States of America and Europe and Japan sort of merge as the core of a new world order in which American sovereignty is diminished and America's freedom of action is circumscribed, and people, individuals who are much more comfortable flying to Paris or Rome or Tokyo than they would be in Boise, Idaho, or St. Louis, Missouri. It is a bipartisan establishment that includes members of both parties, the elites of both parties. You will find it 100% behind NAFTA, 100% for globalism, 100% for interventionism, and I don't think it represents the core of America, which is populist and conservative. The American people are fed up with Washington. They don't trust Washington. You saw Brian's poll. They don't believe in the establishment of either party. I think you mentioned Bob Dole, this will be his most difficult problem in 1996. This country is ready for something new.
Well, I think white men were 100% of the people that wrote the Constitution, 100% of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence, 100% of the people who died at Gettysburg and Vicksburg, probably close to 100% of the people who died at Normandy. This has been a country built basically by white folks in this country who were 90% of the entire nation in 1960 when I was growing up, Rachel, and the other 10% were African Americans who had been discriminated against. That's why. She was put into the best schools.
That's right, she was.
Affirmative action, not because of ability, Rachel. She was put there, she said herself, because of where she came from. She's an Hispanic woman. She's from Puerto Rico. That's why she was passed over other students who applied there with better scores who were denied the right to go to Princeton.
Do you think that she got the grades that she got at Princeton on the basis of affirmative action, too?
I think what they do in the Ivy League, and you know it as well as I do, about half the class graduates cum laude these days.
How'd you do at Georgetown compared to how she did at Princeton?
I'll tell you, I graduated higher in my high school, I will bet, or as high as she did, and I'll certainly say in Georgetown I did, and I'll tell you, I would match my test scores against her, but I'm not qualified for the United States Supreme Court.
But Pat, for you to argue that...
stayed on for 18 years to try to create a democracy in a part of the world that has never known it. We invaded Iraq over weapons it did not even have. We helped ignite the civil war in Syria. We intervened with the Saudis in Yemen. We overthrew Gaddafi, he's a dreadful figure, in Libya. But people are dying in the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. They've been uprooted from their homes. What good has it all accomplished? And this is what Donald Trump was saying. He was saying, look, I think the Iraq war was a horrendous mistake. It's one of the greatest blunders in American diplomatic and political history. And this is why Trump is president. The American people wanted an end to all this, and now the people who engineered these wars are the ones who are demanding that he be indicted for treason.